Thanks for downloading the After School Club. Before we get started, just a reminder that our podcast is supported by Satchel, the team behind the UK's #1 homework software for schools, Show My Homework. So if you're a parent or a teacher or a student who wants to be able to track homework better, head to showmyhomework.co.uk to find out more. You're listening to the After School Club, a podcast for telling stories about our time at school. My name is Rhys Giles, and our guest today is the former president of the world-famous Footlights at Cambridge University. You may have seen him on the Rob Brydon Show, live at the Apollo, 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown, or Have I Got News for You? He's been on all of the shows, he's won all the awards. It's Phil Wang.
Thanks, Rhys. Good to be here. I've not won all of the awards. The only awards I've ever won were student comedy awards. Since graduating, I've not won anything. I've not won anything myself.
All right, well, let's pretend you haven't graduated yet. And,
I often do.
This was recorded in 2012. I don't know. Wait, how old are you?
I'm 27. I was graduating in 2012. Yeah.
Wow,
That's good knowledge.
I'm perfect.
Or luck.
My first question is, how are you, Phil?
I'm okay. I'm all right.
Brilliant.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, actually. Yeah, it's good to have you here.
It's good to be here. It's a beautiful studio you have. Everything is very top of the range.
Is it?
No, it's not, listener. It's all very much mocked up. What are these panels?
We found
foam.
those. They were going to be thrown out by a different office in the building.
Okay.
And the padding I ordered on Amazon, it used to be a topper for a mattress. And it came discoloured. So,
well, I think that's
wasn't
I think I'd
second-hand.
rather discoloured than coloured with mattresses. I think you only worry more when there's patches of definite colour.
I mean, when I say discoloured, I mean you can see the blue, and then there's a strange green-yellow.
Oh
fading on it.
yeah. So I would call that coloured
Okay.
more than discoloured.
Let's just do this for 40 minutes. So, obviously, we're talking about school. Phil, you have one of the most interesting and eclectic kind of school histories that I've heard of.
Oh really? Well, that's good.
I mean, we've only had 2 episodes so far, and they were.
Oh okay.
So, maybe I'll say that again in a few episodes. But you started school in Malaysia.
Yeah, because that's where I grew up, so that made sense.
So, can you tell us a bit about your school in Malaysia?
I have a bunch of schools in Malaysia. My first school was a kindergarten, which was an KIS, Kinabalu International School. It's for international people, expats basically. My mother is a British, was then as well. And so we thought maybe that's our community. We're part of the expat community. So I went to Kinabalu International School, very, very small school, maybe 60 kids in the whole school. Something like that, literally one block.
And what
One building.
proportion, I know a lot of international schools, some tend to have lots of local students there, some tend to have way, way more expat students.
Yeah.
So was it generally mixing with other expat students, or did you have...
Yeah, they were mostly expat students, yeah. Or sort of Western-minded local people, you know.
And would you say it was a good school?
No.
No?
It wasn't a good school because there were just too few kids, and just because a school serves the expat community doesn't mean it's going to be a high-achieving school. It means its courses will be dictated by whatever the kids want to study. So at some point, it got to a point where they weren't offering further maths, but they were offering tourism A-levels. I mean, this was far after I'd left, but I mean, it wasn't a good school in that sense. It was I don't know. I didn't really see the point of it. It was so small. It was just, you would have got a better education just going to one of the local schools. I think it was more an expression of otherness than it was an educational choice.
So that's interesting. So as a child, did you mainly mix with the students in the school itself, or you say as an expression of otherness, were there local kids who you didn't actually interact with because you felt outside?
Well, I suppose I was a
of that
little
community?
different from the other expats, and that I wasn't necessary because my father's Malaysian, so my entire father's side was local, and so my family life was completely local. But for a couple of years, I went to this international school. It wasn't for very long. I don't even remember. It was like maybe 2-3 years.
Okay.
I was very young. And after that, I moved to local school, Chinese school, which was called Ziyu. And my
Bless you.
aunt... If that wasn't close enough to sounding like Archu, I would have taken offense, but that was pretty good. You should have been faster. You should have been faster, though, because now I know you thought about it and you went for it.
The thinking was,
if it was
offensive? If he stops talking, we can cut it out if it is. But I'm just going to go for it. We'll just scrap the entire episode.
But that was a Chinese, again, kindergarten, I guess, or like later on kindergarten. And my aunt worked there as a teacher. And so I went there for a couple of years. That was all right. I remember really enjoying the exams. I've always really enjoyed exams. Well, I did at school. I loved exams because I found them really easy. At university, I hated them because they were really hard. But at school, they were easy, so I loved exams. And then after that, I went to a Chinese primary school, which was called Chonghua. Anything? You got anything? Chonghua.
I'll cut something in at this point when I think of a joke.
It's just going to be bless you again. You can just apply a bless you to all of them.
Sounds like actually, no.
So Chonghua was I had my most traumatic experience because that's where I got hit the most. I got caned there. So every teacher would have their own cane, or rotan. I think in English it's ratan cane, which is like a stick. It's sort of like a thin bamboo, and each teacher would have their own, like their Patronus, but it wasn't a spirit animal. It was just a stick of differing thickness. So I remember my Malay teacher had quite a thin cane. And so when she hit your hand with that cane, the pain was sharp but brief. It would dissipate quite quickly. So I've always felt I could kind of skimp a bit on the Malay homework because the cane wasn't that. The pain of the cane didn't hang around. My Chinese teacher had a thick cane, so I always did that homework. My music teacher had a really thick cane as well, and I was once caned in music class for singing at the wrong time. And I got a big blue bruise across my palm. And that's when my parents took me out of that school.
Of course, in the UK, people might have had conversations with grandparents or parents where they would have experienced the cane in school. Did you at the time know that it was an unusual thing, or?
No, it seemed pretty normal to me.
Yeah.
Although I was actually lucky because I didn't get hit in my house. Most kids got hit at home as well. And so, when I remember my friends would ask, what do your parents do if you get bad results? And I'd say, oh, they just tell me to try hard. And my friends go, what? They don't hit you across the head. They don't cane you on the ass. And so I was lucky in that I wasn't getting abused at home on top of school, but the caning at school also really terrified me. I still have a dreadful fear of authority to this day from that, and fear of anyone in power. I've got better, because in the UK, you can sue anyone, and people have rights, and people bang on about their stupid rights all the time, which is nice, because it means people can't beat you willy-nilly.
And so was it, obviously we'll come back to talking about Malay schools.
Malaysians, there's a distinction. Malay is a particular, is the sort of a race of people from the Malay Peninsula who speak Malay. But Malaysia is made up of Malay people, Chinese people, and Indian people. So I don't have any. I don't have any Malay blood.
Was a lesson. Malaysian was
is nationality.
We'll come back to talking about that in a moment, but I'm interested in, of course, at the time, you say your friends around you were experiencing worse than you were, and so it was. Did you see that firstly as, oh, I'm actually coming off pretty lightly?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. But
And
it's
then
still traumatic
secondly-
to get hit at all,
Well,
and it's also
yeah.
very embarrassing because it's a really horrible experience. So basically, what happens is if you fail, I had a teacher employ this rule that after an exam, every mark you had, for every percentage mark you had below 80%, you got a strike with a cane. So if you got 75%, you got 5 canes, and Lord save you if you got 40%, I guess. I don't know if she carried out that algorithm all the way down the percentage scale, but anyway. And so it would be announced, these following people are going to get caned, and then she say the names out, and you'd go up, walk up to the front of the class, and you get in line in front of the teacher's chairs. It was like receiving Holy Communion, and you want to be at the front because you have the least time to wait for it. That was the real pain, was waiting for the cane that you knew was coming. And when it came to your turn, you stick your hand out and you had to roll out your hand to expose your palm, and then she'd strike you down the hand, and you'd cry and you'd go back to your seat.
And when you came to the UK for the first time, were you shocked that people were shocked by this idea? Or had you grown into understanding that that's not something that you should do?
I had by then, because I'd gone after Chonghua, which was the last Chinese school I went to. I went to a sort of more Christian school, and a slightly nicer school that only caned you if you were really naughty. You got a caning. It was like execution. Like, it happened, but it was pretty rare.
Right.
And then after that, I went to my second international school, which was in nearby Brunei, and that was definitely built in the British system. Had a lot of British teachers, and was built, I think, mainly by British people. And so from there on out, it was not the norm anymore for me. I'm still surprised by how shocked people are here, because how long ago did capital punishment stop at schools?
Capital punishment at schools?
Is that what it's called?
Corporal punishment.
Corporal. I always say capital punishment.
Capital punishment at schools, it still goes on, but people don't talk about it.
What's capital punishment?
When you kill someone.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well, the punishment you get for killing someone.
Oh, no. Capital punishment is execution.
Oh, execution. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Corporal
punishment
is physical.
Oh, okay.
Pain, Well, I know. I reckon my dad probably experienced it. If you're listening, Dad, email in TASC podcast. Don't text. Don't call. No. But that would have been in the 50s and possibly the 60s.
Yeah.
And so that's how people our age, in quotation marks, probably would just never have experienced it.
Right. But still only like a generation, max 2 generations away, right?
But then I
also
think
depends on the school you went to, I suppose. It was worse in, like, the brothers. Well, there's a particular sect of Christian schools that were particularly bad.
I'll defer to your greater knowledge on that.
I don't know.
To a certain extent, I think it's just the massive and sharp U-turn in corporal punishment for any children, and my parents spanked me when I was a kid. Yeah.
How often?
I think it was just when you, like you say, when you've been really bad.
On the butt?
Yeah.
Bare butt?
I can't remember.
Bare hand, bare butt?
Out that memory.
Over the knee? Over the knee. Were you over the knee? Was it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Was it like an official proceeding? Like,
I mean, it was over sort of 4 or 5 weeks ago, so so it's hard to remember now. But it was an official thing.
Okay.
Like they had to get it signed off. That's not true. But now, my very same parents say you should never hit a child.
Oh, really? I remember my mother slapping me in the butt once.
Mm.
I remember that very vividly. An out-of-body experience, I can see me getting hit by her just losing her rag and going, smack! But I don't remember anything else at home.
I think it's just, like I say, just any physical contact between students and teachers is just so unacceptable that you would have people our age. It was like just completely out of their wheelhouse. I
still find it weird how little how little power teachers have over students here.
So do you think that system that you experienced worked?
Well, I'm a relatively high-functioning, lawful member of society.
Are any of your former classmates not high-functioning members of society? And how did that correlate with the number of canes?
Well,
I presume you've done a study.
I've not met any of them since. I don't know. I think they all. I don't think it's worth it in the end. I think a lot of them grow up to be not very confident and a bit frightened and a bit.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a. I don't. On balance, I think it's a net negative thing.
So
for
at
children.
the time.
Although I can understand frustrations when kids won't listen. I remember the first time I went to school and we went back to the Midlands, which is where my mother's from, so Stoke area. We were there for a couple of months. Mum decided to put us in a school in Leek for a month. So we had an experience of going to school in Leek, and I just couldn't believe how disrespectful the students were of the teachers and how little they paid attention, and how great how well kitted the school was. Like, it was a state school, and I couldn't believe how nice the labs were, and even though they have interactive whiteboards, and it's like, why are you kids letting this go to waste? Why aren't you paying attention? So it's a grey area, isn't it? I think you shouldn't introduce physical abuse into a child's life. I don't think.
Until why?
Until they can fight back, I think.
Okay, so you want it to be a
fair fight.
contest of strength
yeah.
rather than a one-sided.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you a good student at school? You're saying a lot about enjoying exams.
Yeah, I was a great student.
Yeah?
Yeah. I was very good at school. I found school easy, except for Chinese at Chinese school was quite hard. But I mean, at Chinese school I was just so traumatized I couldn't really perform well. Once I was in a more nurturing environment, then everything just became really easy.
So it did have quite a profound effect on you. You're talking about it almost casually.
Yeah, well, I'm casual about it now, but at the time it was a very traumatic thing, and it's just all this cloud that surrounds you. I was quite a sad kid. It makes you very sad just all the time. Yeah. But once that period of my life was over, I really excelled at school.
Did you have any favourite subjects?
Maths, physics, didn't like PE. Music I liked. English, when I went to international school in Brunei, English, I really loved English for a bit, and then the teacher started following the syllabus more, and it got really boring, and I ended up hating it. But maths and physics have always been because I find them easy and enjoyable.
And of course that ties into engineering, which is what you ended up doing at university. Yeah. Both of the we tend to talk to a lot of comedians on this. It's not necessary, but we do. It tends to be usually when you talk to comedians about their time at school, they talk about their time doing drama, or how they were messing around in lessons, or they were bullied and it was a response to that, or they were bullies and it enhanced their ability to bully.
Who have you interviewed that was a self-confessed bully?
Oh no, I'm just speaking personally.
Oh, okay.
Not a self-confessed comedian, but do you think that it's unusual that you were quite an academic student that went into something that's creative?
Not. I mean, in maybe the sort of modern stand-up tradition is unusual, but in the old tradition of like footlights and like writers and comedy writers and that sort of thing, I don't think it's unusual to have been good at school. I think it's usual to have been an anorak and a bit of a dweeb, and like I find comedy very mathematical and very scientific. People are always surprised when they hear I was studying engineering, but jokes are basically the controlled release of information, and the effectiveness of a joke is to an extent determined by how effectively you lay down the premise and then release information. Set down punchline, right? And there's so many mathematical engineering sort of factors to comedy. There's structure, there's timing, there's logic, logical paths, decision making. So I think it's actually a very scientific thing. I think what people who study things like the arts or English, what they have over me is maybe language and references and cultural, historical context and things like that. But when it comes down to the nitty-gritty technical aspect of comedy, I think studying science and maths actually put me in very good stead.
That's interesting. Were you funny at school?
I was before I went to Chinese school, and joy was beaten out of me. When I was in kindergarten, I was very funny and made little jokes and faces, and I ran around and do silly things. And then I started getting beaten at Chinese school, and you tend to lose an element of confidence.
And so, when did you start to rediscover that?
Well, I suppose a little when I left, when I went to this less violent school, also in Malaysia. I remember I once became, as bad as I was at sports, I became house captain one year because during the selection process I made a funny face and the whole class laughed, and I won by a landslide despite having zero sporting capability. I was very much a figurehead of that house, the sports house.
Do you believe that's why... Actually, no, I was going to do a sport joke. Is that why Wayne Rooney got to where he is today? Because of his funny face?
No, he's a very good footballer.
Yeah, it's also that as well. I'm
He's
sure.
an extremely good talented athlete, yeah.
Yeah.
Scores a lot of goals.
Cut that out, Henry. So when did what you wanted to be when you grew up transition from something to do with maths and science and obviously engineering when you chose that at university to I'm going to be a comedian?
My first ever gig was when I was 18. It was at school, in Bath, where they didn't beat you, but one of the teachers did go to my head of house. Did go to jail for having an affair with a student. So it comes out in other ways, I suppose, that carnal tension between students and teachers that always exists.
I guess so. I'm just laughing at the idea that every time you mention a school, you
I
have to say whether or not, or what degree to which.
B or NB.
Yeah.
That was not a beating school.
That's good.
I didn't like it. I didn't like it.
Okay, sorry about that, guys.
It
was a long time ago.
I imagine it's still bad. It's a private school and it's not worth the fees. So
Okay,
if anyone is listening, don't do it. It's not good.
I say do it.
No, don't go. It's an unpleasant environment. It probably still is.
Are you sure that your own president of the school wasn't? It's got better since. It was better before you arrived.
Yeah,
anyway, what were we talking
possible.
about?
It's possible, but that's unlikely. What were we talking about?
When
I decided
your first gig.
My first gig was at the school. There was the head of drama, Mr. Darryl Harding, who was on the whole a good egg. There was an improv group at school. He took some of the drama students and made like a little improv group. He himself was in an improv group, and we went on a little field trip to watch his group perform once, and he said when he was performing, and we were like, oh my, we're gonna tell. Anyway, so he had this comedy club. What was it called? Club Haha. It was called Club Haha, and he advertised there were 5-minute stand-up spots going if anyone wanted to do that. And so I turned up and said, "Hi, can I be in the show?" And he said, I think we've run out of seats." And I said, "No, I want to perform." And he said, "Oh, all right. Okay, you can do 5 minutes." So I went up and I did 5 minutes of mostly stolen material that I'd adjusted slightly. I thought comedy was like music, you could just pick songs like a karaoke kind of thing. And so I did a lot of material by Jim Gaffigan, Pablo Francisco. I don't know if you're aware of Pablo Francisco, an American comedian, and Russell Peters, who every Asian knows. But with Russell Peters jokes, I just changed Indian for Chinese, and that pretty much worked the whole way through. So that was my first gig. And then I did another gig at school. It had moved up to the assembly hall, the big room. Biggest gig of my life. And I wrote a whole new set.
Big school. Bigger than the Apollo.
Yeah, man. It felt like the Apollo. And I wrote a whole new set that was just about Kingswood School life, about like the different cliques and the teachers, and it went on really well. And I think that remains one of my favorite ever gigs. It is a set I only ever did once.
Do you remember any of the jokes?
There's something about how otherworldly the Kenyan students were. There's some Kenyans in there, and they were always very strong. And what's funny about that?
Nothing, Phil.
They were white Kenyans.
Ooh.
Yeah, but they still. Oh, so I did make a joke about how otherworldly all black people are. It was about the white Kenyans who are at the school.
Right.
But if I wanted to, I would have done that as well. I was very un-PC in my burgeoning years of stand-up.
It's amazing to be here at the end of someone's career. Nothing gets cut.
I should say when I say otherworldly, I meant in a complimentary fashion, in that they seemed because they were always more athletic and tall and beautiful, more so than the regular students. Another one was just like an impression of one of the Welsh teachers. In retrospect, it was quite a racially charged set, but it still went down very well, and it was, I think, quite well observed. I seem to remember. And I guess you could say, Reese, that's when I caught the bug. I went to university, but one of the main, I went to Cambridge. I applied to Cambridge in large part because I knew about the footlights, and to an extent, I thought engineering was the subject I was most likely to get in with. The most important thing to me, I think, if I was being honest with myself, was that I went to Cambridge and was able to take part in all the comedy that was going on there. And so once I got there, I straight away just went to the Footlights auditions and tried to audition for all the shows, and set up my own comedy night in my college, and I think it might still be going. And then I won the Chortle Student Comedian Award at the end of my second year, and that sort of marked for me the definite swap over of pursuing an engineering career to pursuing a comedy career.
All right.
I still had 2 years of my degree left, and it became a bit tedious. But
after you won the award.
After I won the award. Yeah.
Okay, so you didn't just pack it in. You can still.
No, I finished it. I wasn't going to throw away 20 years of work.
Yeah, because if comedy doesn't work out,
exactly.
I
was going to get my master's. I've already gone that far. Also, Cambridge is a great place just to practice comedy and perform and write.
So going back to school for a moment, if you were to go to for any of the schools that you've been to, if you were to go to a school reunion,
yeah,
or maybe for all of them, because they're all there in your honour, they've all gathered together for a school union.
Or precisely to see
reunion.
Me.
Well, I mean, I don't know why all of those different schools would gather in the same place if it wasn't that you.
But you're saying this is a reunion in my honour?
I mean, like, why else would they all be there? Schools in Malaysia. Schools.
Oh, so this is a single united school reunion for all the schools that I went to?
Yeah, I mean, it's hypothetical.
Yeah. I'm just trying to clarify that
I haven't organised this.
The point of the
quite
hypothesis. It sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
It sounds like the kind of thing I deserve. Sounds like the kind of thing everyone would enjoy.
Who would you seek out, and who would you avoid? I mean, there are a lot of teachers who you may want to avoid for particular reasons, but
I reckon I could take them now.
Students, teachers, anyone that you'd look for, anyone that you wouldn't?
I'd want to look for the kids at my A-level school, which is Kingswood, who thought they were all that and are probably not achieving much now. That's the fantasy of every slightly bullied or uncool kid, I think, is to go back to school and see where the wankers are now.
Yeah, I always find it interesting because obviously you stay in touch with people on Facebook to a certain extent, and the coolest people in school are the least cool adults, and vice versa. It feels to me.
That's as a general rule. I think that does prove itself to be true in most cases. Yeah.
Are there any inspiring teachers that you would go off and have a chat with?
You know what? Not really. I mean, the closest thing I had to an inspiring teacher was maybe my English teacher in Brunei, who was a Geordie called Mr. Moore. And when he started off with us, he got us to just write creatively, and it was the most exciting thing. I loved it so much. But then he lost a certain fire in his eye and started sticking to the syllabus, and English lessons started becoming really dull.
Mm.
When we just had to read Great Expectations, which is in large part a very, very boring book. And so I guess I'd want to see how he is, because that brief period where I found English and writing so invigorating was in large part down to his wide-eyed enthusiasm. Aside from that, I don't think there's any teachers I would...
If you had a second chance at school, do you think you'd do anything differently?
I'd probably be less afraid of the British teachers when I moved over, because I thought the same rules sort of applied, and the same hierarchies applied, and the same authoritarianism applied, and didn't. And I kind of think maybe I should have been a little more difficult.
That's an interesting switch, because we were talking earlier, obviously, about your shock at how difficult some students in the UK are in comparison to your international schools.
Yeah.
But you decided to join them if you had a second go.
Well, yeah. I think practice at being difficult with authority would have been useful for my current adult life. You know what I mean? Like, I think rebelling against teachers is to an extent useful practice for what happens in adult life, where you occasionally have to go against the perceived authority on something.
A healthy questioning of authority.
I suppose, yeah, and that would have been healthy for me, but I was so traumatized by Chinese school that I wasn't really capable of it. Aside from that, I wish I was more slutty. I wish I'd worn little skirts.
For listeners who haven't seen Phil, he is a very, very sexy man.
I've got lovely hips. I wish I had tried more at sports. That's the one thing I do. Physical activity is something that has always been missing in my life. I never enjoyed it. I played a lot of video games. I hated sports, and when I have children, I'm going to encourage them not to be like that. So I think that'll be the main change for me, to try harder at sports.
So one of the questions we always ask people is, what's the most important lesson you learned from school, academic or otherwise?
From the entire time,
From the entire time.
I guess it would have been to... The more work you do in the moment, the less you have to do later on, which is something that I always found obvious, and which always baffled me most about the other kids who didn't pay attention in class and didn't do the work then and there, because they ended up having to do it later on at home. And I hated homework, so I just got the work done there and paid attention, so I didn't have to study it again on myself, so I just knew it straight away. So I guess that was the main lesson I took from it, is just do things right the first time, and you won't have to keep coming back to it.
I've got an overarching theory on people who go to Oxbridge, which is that they can do that.
Do you think it's a matter of ability and not of attitude?
I wouldn't like to completely generalise, but one of my friends who went to Aus, if you're listening, who went and studied medicine at Cambridge.
One of my friends went to Auschwitz. Is that school in Aus?
It's a popular school trip. And whilst he was there, whilst he was at Cambridge, the thing I found most impressive about his attitude to work was, if he had a football match and it would end at a particular time and I would arrive to visit him an hour later, during that hour he would be working. Now, when I went to university, it took me 3 hours to tidy my room, to pick the music that I was going to revise to wear the right revision outfit in my own room, and eventually I would get around to doing half an hour of revision, and then I get bored and put my stuff away. You know? Which
well, we at Cambridge don't really have a choice because we have more work and fewer weeks than everyone else. We had 8-week terms, and an ungodly amount of work. I mean, depended on your degree, of course, but in engineering especially, it's just you couldn't afford to not do work when you had the opportunity. But I guess, but that impatience with work, I hate work, and which is why I always try to get it out of the way. I hated homework, which is why I got it done and it didn't hang around. So I get, but thus I don't know if that's a lesson if I already knew it when I went into school. It was just reinforced for me. As far as lessons that I had to learn from school in general, I really don't know. I can don't hit kids. Don't hit children. It doesn't help.
That's the takeaway for the episode. I think that's definitely the takeaway for the episode. I said that's a joke and I realise it's actually true. Now,
Chinese takeaway.
This will never air. No one will ever hear this. At the After School Club, as well as chatting to our guest, we like to hear your school stories. If you'd like to send us yours, you can email us at tascpodcast@gmail.com. We have one short story this week from Sam, and here it is. I started a trade in stolen stuff from the newsagents, where I did a paper route. I eventually got found out when one of the boys who sold my stuff for me in different classes got caught. The boarding house masters were pulling their hair out over where everyone was getting all the chewing gum that we were selling. Like any good network of distributors, nobody talked. All trade stopped for about 3 days before we started again. Looking back, I'm glad I never confided this to my counsellor. What they would have made from my 13-year-old self starting a school mafia doesn't bear thinking about. Have you ever been involved in any criminal conspiracies, Phil?
Well, you know what? I was actually involved in something quite similar to that in my school. I was very much into wrestling, as any right-minded 13-year-old boy should be. And I made like wrestling posters, like of WWE wrestlers, but they were just pictures of The Rock on a piece of A4 that I printed at home. But I sold them. I sold them at school for like 1 ringgit a poster, which is like 20p, would have been even less then. And I'm sure I wasn't making the money back on the ink. But it just felt good to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah, I mean, most businesses fail based on decisions like that.
We had an ant fighting ring. So we had every lunch break for a period, we'd go and find ants, and we'd make 2 fight. And did we bet on them? I don't think we had money to bet on them, but we'd put 2 ants down and watch them fight, and we'd pluck the antennae off one so that we know which one was whose. But 2 things we didn't realize about ants was, number 1, they don't just fight each other for no reason.
I was going to ask, yeah.
And number 2, removing the antennae will handicap that fighter quite a great deal, because you basically just poked out the eyes of your champion. So I mean, had our grasp of entomology been stronger, we probably wouldn't have wasted our time. But that's the closest I've ever got to like a dog fighting or some mandingo fighting ring. Can you say mandingo? Is that?
I don't know what mandingo means.
Like, it's what you know in Django Unchained.
Yeah.
So the fighting that Leonardo DiCaprio's character organizes, that's mandingo fighting.
I mean,
I don't know if the word itself is derogatory or racist.
We need to check up on about 15 things during this podcast. So.
But it's a school podcast. I'm schooling you. I don't know if the word itself is offensive. Its connotations, of course, are upsetting and offensive, but...
Yeah, I'm going to Google that.
Yeah, check it out. Check it out.
Phil is a brilliant tweeter. Find him
I'm not good. Look at the Twitter.
Look, I follow you on Twitter,
Okay.
and I wrote this, so I'm saying that you're pretty good. I saw your thing. Was it you that posted the thing about train man?
Oh, yeah.
That was good.
Yeah, that's my best tweet in like 4 years.
Okay.
So get on that, have a look at that, and then unfollow me. Actually, do follow me because I need
Yeah,
more
you've got
followers.
surprisingly few
I've
followers.
not got many followers.
Yeah. There's another Phil Wang on Twitter that has way more than
Oh,
you.
he's this fucking American guy who has been doing like comedy videos for like decades. I hate Phil Wang.
And of course, you're distinguished by
Philip Wang. He calls himself Philip Wang, I think.
Who's got Phil Wang? Because you're Phil N Wang.
Probably some electrical engineer or something who got in an early adopter of Twitter who had to sell transistors. I don't know.
What does the N stand for?
Nathaniel.
Oh, you're going to say naughty for a moment. I was like, he's going to say naughty. No, Nathaniel.
Nathaniel, yeah.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I think so.
Okay. Knight Rider.
We'll check up on that, just like Mandingo. Is Nathaniel okay? His website with links to live dates is philwang.co.uk.
Because I'm a patriot.
And his upcoming, and it's cheaper than .com. And his upcoming, I've made websites before, Phil, there's no. His upcoming tour is on sale now, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I
Yeah.
highly recommend tickets to getting.
You highly recommend getting tickets to the tour?
Yes.
I do as well. Also, if you happen to be at the Edinburgh Fringe, I'm in desperate need of audience members there, as is everyone, but I'm going to tell you to come to my show, which
Well,
is
I will be there.
7 p.m.
And I won't come and sit. No,
Wow.
it's not true. I'll come along.
Oh, 7 p.m. at the Pleasance Courtyard in Edinburgh for the month
Oh,
of
you're doing the
August.
Pleasance? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to plug besides Edinburgh and...
I have a sketch trio called Daphne.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to
We're
mention
currently making our second Radio 4 series, which is called Daphne Sounds Expensive, and we're recording that next month, and it should be out around July on the 11 p.m. slot on Radio 4. So.
And for Radio 4, you tune to which frequency?
4? I think it's FM 4.
4.
4 hertz?
4.
I think it's 4
Is that
hertz.
why it's called Radio 4?
Yeah. Radio 4,
It's named
because it's
after
4
the
hertz.
Okay. Radio 1 hertz.
Radio 1 sure does hurt. Radio 1 hurts me a lot every time I listen to it.
Yeah, I was going to say, is the 4 hertz the name of your sketch group? But there's 3 of you.
The 4 hertz.
The After School Club is supported by Satchel, the team behind the UK's #1 homework software for school, Show My Homework. To find out more about what Team Satchel can do for your school, head to showmyhomework.co.uk. Please subscribe to the After School Club and leave us a 5-star review whether you liked us or not. Follow us on Twitter at TASC Podcast and like us on Facebook. The After School Club is hosted by me, Rhys Giles, and usually produced by Jack O'Leary, but we've got a guest producer in, Henry Otwill. Our theme tune is Better at Getting Worse by Bakito, which is Jack's band. You can find it on iTunes and Spotify, and follow them on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you very much for your kind attention. That is all.
School dismissed, is what you say at the end?
Beck said school's out,
Okay.
but I think everyone can get their own little catchphrase, thinking
Okay.
that they're the first ones. Do you want to get a clean?
Okay, my catchphrase will be... the bell doesn't let you go, I let you go. And I let you go now.
That's great.
Looking down on all of you, and I never let go.